Mila Winters had never been reckless in her life. She was the shy assistant who triple-checked emails before sending them. The girl who avoided eye contact in meetings, even when she knew she was right. The woman who stayed invisible on purpose, because invisible meant safe. Her life was built on routines. Early mornings, quiet lunches, late nights with a book she barely read. No risks, no drama, no mistakes. And yet, here she was. New Year's Eve. The city outside her small apartment was loud with celebration. Fireworks cracked the sky. Laughter floated through open windows. Everyone else seemed to belong somewhere, to someone. Mila didn't. She sat on the edge of her couch, shoes kicked off, dress wrinkled from hours of sitting alone. The cheap wine she'd poured for courage burned softly in her chest. Not enough to make her dizzy. Just enough to loosen the careful control she'd lived by for years. She told herself she was fine. She wasn't. Loneliness has a way of getting louder at night. On holidays. On moments when the world reminds you of everything you don't have. She picked up her phone, scrolled mindlessly, then stopped. A name stared back at her. Luca Romano. Boss. Her heart skipped so hard it physically hurt. She hadn't messaged him. She knew that. She never would. Luca Romano existed in a separate world, one made of power, silence, and danger. He was her employer, nothing more. The man whose footsteps made entire offices go quiet. The man who never raised his voice and never needed to. So why was his name on her screen? Her phone buzzed again. A single message. Are you safe? Mila's breath caught in her throat. How did he even know she was alone? Her fingers hovered over the screen. Logic screamed at her to put the phone down. To breathe. To remember her place. But the wine made her honest, and honesty was dangerous. She thought of the empty room. The noise outside that never reached her. The year ending exactly how it had begun. Quiet, unnoticed, untouched. Her hands started shaking. She didn't type a reply. She stared at his name, memories flashing through her mind. The way Luca watched everything without seeming to. The way his voice dropped when he gave an order. The way she always felt strangely calm when he walked into the room, even though everyone else seemed afraid. She swallowed. This is stupid, she told herself. You don't belong in his world. But a different thought pushed through. Soft and terrifying. What if he's the only one who would come? Her thumb moved before her courage could disappear. 3 words. That was all it took. Come get me! The moment she sent it, reality slammed back into place. Her eyes widened. Her heart raced. Panic rushed through her like ice water. What did I just do? She whispered to the empty room. She dropped the phone onto the couch like it had burned her skin. Her hands flew to her face. This wasn't her. She didn't do things like this. She didn't invite danger. She didn't cross lines that couldn't be uncrossed. Seconds felt like minutes. She stood up, sat back down, picked up the phone, put it back down. No reply. Maybe he wouldn't answer. Maybe he'd think it was a mistake. Maybe tomorrow this would feel like a bad dream. Then her phone vibrated again. Her entire body went still. A new message lit up the screen. Where are you, Mila? Her pulse thundered in her ears. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't ignored. This was real. And for the first time in her careful, invisible life, Mila Winters realized she had just stepped into something she could never undo. She didn't even know why she had texted him. The question hit her the moment after panic faded, when the silence in her apartment grew heavy again. Why him? Out of everyone in the city, friends, co-workers, even strangers, why? Had her fingers chosen Luca Romano? He was not just her boss. Luca Romano was power-wrapped in a perfectly tailored suit. The kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice because the room leaned toward him the moment he spoke. Cold eyes that missed nothing. Quiet commands that sounded less like requests and more like facts. Men feared him without ever knowing exactly why. She'd seen it every day at the office. Executives twice her age straightened when he walked in. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even people who outranked her treated him with a careful respect that felt nervous. And Mila? Mila stayed out of his way. She worked for his legal company, buried safely behind paperwork and schedules. She managed his calendar, filtered his calls, handled emails no one else was trusted to touch. Her world was neat files and silent efficiency. His world was locked rooms and conversations that stopped when she entered. There was an invisible line between them. She had never touched him, never flirted, never lingered too long in his presence. She kept her head down, did her job, went home. That was the rule. Yet tonight that rule had shattered. She stared at her phone, Luca's last message glowing softly on the screen. "Where are you?" "Mila." Her chest tightened. What scared her wasn't just the text she'd sent. It was the truth behind it. Somewhere deep, inside, beneath years of caution, she had known exactly who to call. Because Luca Romano scared everyone else, but he had never scared her. She tried to remember the first time she noticed it. Maybe it was the way he always waited until she finished speaking, even when others interrupted her. Or how he never raised his voice at her, even when something went wrong. Or the quiet way he'd once said, "Take the rest of the day off," after noticing her hands shaking from exhaustion. No questions, no judgment, just control, calm, certainty. Mila hugged her arms around herself. Tonight, the city felt too big. The noise outside felt threatening instead of joyful. She didn't feel drunk anymore, just exposed, vulnerable in a way she hated admitting. She was scared, not of a specific thing, not of a person or a shadow in the hallway. She was scared of being alone. Her phone buzzed again. "I'm asking again, are you safe?" Her throat tightened. That was it, wasn't it? Luca Romano didn't ask pointless questions. He didn't check in without reason. If he asked whether she was safe, it meant he cared, at least enough to make sure she wasn't in danger. And that made something crack open inside her. She had spent her whole life being careful, being good, being invisible. No one ever checked if she was safe unless it was their job to do so. But Luca? He didn't have to ask. She typed slowly, choosing each word like it might explode. "I think so, I'm at home." The reply came almost instantly. "Send the address." Her heart stumbled. That wasn't concern anymore. That was action. She hesitated. This was the moment to stop, to laugh it off, to say it was a mistake. She could still back out, still protect the small, predictable life she knew. But then she imagined the night stretching on, the fireworks fading, another year beginning, exactly like the last, quiet, empty, untouched. Her fingers moved. She sent her address. The moment she did, a strange calm settled over her. Whatever this was, she had already chosen. And the truth finally became clear. She hadn't texted Luca Romano because he was powerful, or dangerous, or her boss. She had texted him because in a world that had never felt safe to her, he was the only man who felt like control instead of chaos. 9 minutes later, a black car slid to a stop outside Mila's apartment building. Not a taxi, not police. Something darker, something deliberate. Mila watched from behind the thin curtain, her breath shallow, heart pounding so loudly she was sure the neighbors could hear it. The streetlights reflected off the polished surface of the car, turning it into a shadow with edges. The engine didn't roar or announce itself. It simply existed, quiet, controlled, waiting, just like him. Her phone rang. The sound made her flinch. She stared at the screen, even though she already knew who it was. "Luca Romano," she answered with trembling fingers. "Open the door, Mila." His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that came from certainty, not patience. It wasn't rushed, wasn't irritated. It sounded like a fact. Like he was already there and the rest was just formality. Her knees nearly gave out. "How?" Her voice cracked. She swallowed and tried again. "How did you get here so fast?" "I'm downstairs." That wasn't an answer, and somehow it made her heart race even faster. She hung up without saying goodbye and stood frozen in the middle of her living room. The reality of it hit her all at once. Luca Romano wasn't a voice on the phone or a distant presence behind office doors anymore. He was here, in her world. She smoothed her dress with shaking hands, then laughed weakly at herself. As if appearances mattered now. As if this could be undone by fixing her hair or wiping the wineglass ring off the table. Her feet moved on their own, carrying her down the narrow hallway, past the door she rarely opened to anyone. Each step felt heavier than the last. "This is insane," her mind screamed. "You should turn back." But another part of her, the part that had sent the text, kept going. When she reached the door, she stopped. Her hand hovered over the handle. For a brief moment, she imagined not opening it, pretending she wasn't home. Letting this night pass like a mistake she'd wake up from tomorrow. Then she remembered his question. "Are you safe?" She unlocked the door. The hallway outside was dim, smelling faintly of cold air and concrete. And there he was. Luca Romano stood just beyond the threshold, filling the space like he owned it. Black coat, broad shoulders, dark hair perfectly in place, as if he hadn't rushed at all. His expression was unreadable, carved from control and restraint. Two men stood farther back, half hidden by the shadows. They didn't look at her directly, but she felt their presence like pressure. Luca lifted a hand slightly. They stepped away without a word. Her heart skipped. He looked at her then. Really looked. His eyes moved from her bare feet to her face, taking in the flushed skin, the tension she couldn't hide. Something shifted in his gaze, sharp, assessing, almost protective. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm fine," she lied automatically. He stepped closer, not into her space, just enough to block the hallway behind him. Just enough to make the world feel smaller. "You don't text me unless something is wrong," he said quietly. "So tell me." The weight of his attention pressed down on her chest. This wasn't a man used to guessing. He was used to knowing. She swallowed. "I didn't think you'd actually come." His jaw tightened just slightly. "I don't ignore you," he replied. The words hit harder than she expected. Fireworks exploded outside. The sound muffled through the walls, bright flashes briefly lighting the hallway. For a second, the world felt suspended between noise and silence. Luca glanced past her into the apartment. "May I come in?" he asked. He waited. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. And as Mila stepped aside, allowing him to cross the threshold, she understood something with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just an arrival. It was the moment her life split into before and after, and there would be no going back. When she opened the door fully, Luca Romano filled the space. Not just physically, though he was tall, broad-shouldered, impossible to ignore, but with presence. The hallway seemed to shrink around him, like the air itself had learned to make room. His black coat was immaculate, dark against the dim light. No sign of hurry, no sign of weakness. His eyes were sharp and unreadable, the kind of eyes that saw too much and revealed nothing. For a long moment he didn't speak. He looked at her once, her bare feet on the cold floor, the faint flush on her cheeks from wine and nerves, the tension in her shoulders, the fear she tried and failed to hide. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Are you hurt?" he asked. The question was direct. No softness, no panic, just control. She shook her head quickly. "No." He didn't relax. His gaze returned to her face, searching for something she couldn't name. "Then why did you call me?" The words were calm, but there was weight behind them. Luca Romano didn't ask questions. Casually. When he asked, it meant he expected the truth. Mila's throat felt dry. She opened her mouth, closed it again. The answer sounded foolish in her head, weak, embarrassing. The city outside erupted in another burst of fireworks, the sound echoing through the building. It felt too loud, too close, like the world was celebrating something she didn't understand. Her voice trembled. She forced herself to meet his eyes. That alone took courage she didn't know she had. "I didn't know who else would come." The words hung between them. Silence followed, thick and dangerous. Something shifted in his eyes. It wasn't anger. It was worse. Control tightening around something sharp and protective, like a predator realizing something. Precious had been left unguarded. He stepped closer, not touching her, not crowding her, just close enough that she could feel his warmth, could smell the faint trace of leather and something darker beneath it. The hallway seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them in the quiet space he controlled. "No one else?" he asked softly. She shook her head again, shame burning her cheeks. I don't have many people." His lips pressed into a thin line. For a second, she thought he might be angry with her, for involving him, for crossing a line that should have stayed untouched. But when he spoke again, his voice had dropped, steadier than before. "You shouldn't be alone tonight." The words weren't a suggestion. They were a statement. Mila's heart stumbled. "I didn't mean to bother you." "You didn't," he said immediately. The speed of the response startled her. His eyes flicked past her shoulder, scanning the apartment behind her. Windows, shadows, corners. The way he assessed the space wasn't casual. It was trained, protective, possessive, in a way that made her pulse jump. "Did anyone follow you home?" he asked. "No," she said quickly. "I was just sitting here, drinking," he added, glancing briefly at the wine glass on the table. She nodded, embarrassed. He exhaled slowly, like he was steadying himself. "You trusted me," he said, more to himself than to her. She hadn't thought of it that way, but hearing it out loud made her chest ache. "Yes," she whispered. His gaze snapped back to hers. The air shifted again. There was danger in that look now, not directed at her, but at the world outside her door. Promise of violence if anything had touched her, if anything ever did. Luca straightened, the mask of control sliding back into place. "Come inside," he said quietly. "Lock the door." She stepped back, heart racing, allowing him to enter her apartment fully. As the door closed behind him with a soft click, Mila realized she had done something irreversible. She hadn't just called her boss. She had let Luca Romano into her life, and whatever had awakened in his eyes, it wasn't going to let her go. Everyone in the city knew his name, Luca Romano. It was spoken quietly in expensive offices and dark corners. It traveled through boardrooms and back alleys with equal ease. Men lowered their voices when it came up. Some smiled nervously. Others went silent altogether. Men disappeared after crossing him. Not arrested, not exposed, just gone. Deals closed without signatures, no contracts, no witnesses. A nod from Luca Romano carried more weight than ink. Enemies didn't get warnings. They got consequences. Mila had heard the stories, even if no one ever said them directly. You didn't work in his company without sensing the undercurrent. The way people avoided asking questions. The way certain files arrived without explanation. The way Luca never defended himself against rumors because he didn't need to. Power like his didn't explain itself, and yet, standing in her living room, framed by soft lamplight and second-hand furniture, he didn't look like a monster. He looked still, controlled. Luca removed his coat slowly, folding it over the back of a chair like he belonged there. Like this. Space, her space, had always been part of his world. The movement was careful, deliberate. Nothing wasted, nothing rushed. His eyes kept moving, though. Windows, corners, the door behind him. Protective. That word slid uninvited into her mind. She watched him in silence, her heart beating too fast. This was the man people feared. This was the man who made others disappear. And yet the way he stood between her and the door felt instinctive, like a reflex he didn't even think about. "You know who I am," he said suddenly. It wasn't a question. Mila nodded slowly. "Everyone does." His gaze sharpened. "Then you know what it means to call me." The weight of that settled heavily on her chest. "Yes," she admitted. "I think I do." He studied her for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether she truly understood, or whether he needed to protect her from the truth of it. "You shouldn't," he said quietly. Her breath caught. "Shouldn't what?" "Know me like that," he replied. "Not this close." There was something in his voice then. Not regret, not warning. Restraint. Mila hugged her arms around herself. I didn't mean to step into your world. A faint, humorless smile touched his lips. You didn't step, you were pulled. Her eyes lifted to his. By who? His gaze didn't waver. By me? The honesty of it sent a shiver down her spine. She'd expected excuses, deflection, distance, not ownership. But, he continued softer now, that doesn't mean I'll let it hurt you. Those words shouldn't have comforted her. They did. Luca moved closer to the window, peering out through the glass. The black car still waited below, engine running. She noticed how his body angled slightly, keeping her in his peripheral vision even while watching the street. Always aware, always guarding. People think I'm cruel, he said, his voice almost reflective. That I enjoy fear. She stayed silent, unsure what to say. They're wrong, he went on. Fear is a tool. Control is necessary. Chaos destroys everything it touches. He turned back to her. I don't destroy what I value. Her heart skipped. She didn't trust herself to speak, so she didn't. Luca stepped closer again, stopping just short of touching her. Close enough that she could see. The faint scar near his jaw. Close enough to see exhaustion beneath the control, barely holding something back. You're not part of that world, he said firmly, and I intend to keep it that way. Mila swallowed. Even though I called you? Especially because you called me, he replied. The room felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. In that moment, Mila understood the truth better than any rumor or whispered story. Luca Romano wasn't dangerous because he was cruel. He was dangerous because once he decided something mattered, he protected it at any cost. And somehow, terrifyingly, she had become something that mattered. Mila's apartment was small. Not in a charming way. Not the kind people romanticized. It was small, because small was affordable, and affordable meant safe. Second-hand furniture filled the space. Pieces chosen for usefulness, not beauty. A couch with a faded armrest. A coffee table with one uneven leg. Shelves that held more files and notebooks than decorations. Quiet walls. No photographs of family. No loud colors. No signs of a life built on dreams. Just surviving. Luca stood in the center of it, and somehow, his presence made the apartment feel even smaller. Or maybe it made her realize just how carefully she'd been living. How much of herself she'd packed away into corners. She hugged herself, suddenly aware of how exposed everything felt. Her space, her habits, her loneliness. I shouldn't have texted you, she said softly. The words carried more than regret. They carried fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of wanting. Something she had no right to want. Luca turned toward her. You texted me for a reason. His voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't accusing. It was steady, like he was anchoring the conversation, before it drifted into panic. Mila shook her head. I wasn't thinking. I was drunk. That's not a reason, he replied. That's an excuse. She flinched, then sighed. He was right, and she hated how easily he saw through her. I don't belong in your world, she said. I know that. I handle calendars and emails. I go home to this. She gestured around the room. That's my life. Luca's gaze followed her movement, taking in the worn furniture, the quiet emptiness. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes darkened. This isn't nothing, he said. She laughed quietly. It's not much. It's yours. The word landed heavier than she expected. He walked slowly toward the bookshelf, stopping in front of a row of neatly labeled binders. Budgets, plans, work notes, everything organized, controlled. You live like you're afraid of making noise, he said. Her breath caught. I've learned that noise gets noticed, she replied. And being noticed usually costs something. He turned to face her fully now. Who taught you that? She hesitated. Old memories pressed against her chest, but she didn't let them surface. Life, she said simply. Luca stepped closer, not invading her space, but close enough that she felt his presence like warmth in a cold room. You don't live, he said quietly. You endure. The truth of it hurt more than she expected. She hugged herself tighter. Enduring is safer. For who? He asked. She didn't answer. Outside, another wave of fireworks lit the windows in brief flashes of color. For a moment, her small apartment looked almost alive. Luca followed her gaze. Is this how you wanted to spend tonight? He asked. She shook her head slowly. I didn't want to feel invisible. Silence fell between them. Then he said very softly, You aren't. Her eyes lifted to his. He meant it. In that moment, Luca Romano wasn't a mafia boss or a powerful man with enemies. He was just someone standing in her quiet world, seeing it, and her clearly. Mila swallowed. This shouldn't be happening. Luca studied her, his expression unreadable. Then why is it? She didn't have an answer. She only knew her heart was racing, not from fear alone, but from the awareness of him, standing there, too close, too calm, too certain. You manage my schedule, he said quietly. You see parts of my life most people don't. That's my job, she replied quickly. Yes, he agreed, and you do it because you trust me. She opened her mouth to protest, then stopped. Did she trust him? The realization settled uncomfortably in her chest. Luca took one slow step forward. She didn't move away. That line you're talking about, he said, exists for a reason. Relief flickered through her. Then we should respect it. His gaze locked onto hers. I do. The words surprised her. Every day, he continued, I keep distance. I don't touch what isn't mine to touch. Her pulse jumped. But tonight, he added, you crossed into my world. She wrapped her arms around herself. I didn't mean to. I know, he said immediately. That's why this matters. The room felt smaller again, the air heavier. Mila forced herself to breathe. You scare people, Luca. He didn't look offended. I'm aware. They say you ruin lives. They say many things. She searched his face, trying to match the rumors with the man standing in front of her. The two didn't align. This man watched her like she was fragile, not expendable. Say it, he said suddenly. Say what? What you're really afraid of. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That I won't be able to walk away. His jaw flexed. That fear, he said, is justified. Her breath caught. Then why are you still here? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low, controlled. Because I won't hurt you. The words weren't dramatic. They weren't whispered like a seduction. They were a promise. Mila stared at him, searching for cracks, lies, anything that would tell her to run. She found none. I don't know why, she admitted softly, but I believe you. Something shifted in his eyes then, something dangerous and deeply restrained. You shouldn't, he said, but I do. Another silence fell. Outside, laughter echoed down the street. A new year approaching. A line being crossed. Everywhere. By everyone. Luca exhaled slowly, like he was letting go of a tight grip. I am dangerous, he said again. Not to you. Her heart raced. But if you step any further into my world, he continued, you won't be able to pretend you don't know what I am. She nodded. And if I stay in mine? His gaze softened, just slightly. Then I walk away. The idea of that hurt more than she expected. She realized then what this line truly was. Not a boundary between boss and assistant. Not a rule about power or danger. It was a choice. And standing on one side of it, with Luca Romano watching her like she mattered, Mila Winters knew the hardest part wouldn't be crossing the line. It would be pretending she didn't want to. Fireworks exploded outside, sharp cracks of light and sound tearing across the sky. Color flooded through the windows in brief flashes, red, gold, white, then vanished just as quickly. The city was counting down without them, celebrating a future that hadn't reached this small apartment yet. The clock on Mila's wall ticked loudly, too loudly. Each second felt heavier than the last, like it was pushing her toward something she couldn't step away from. Midnight was coming, a line between years, between before and after. Mila wrapped her arms around herself again, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt standing there with him. The truth pressed against her chest, demanding to be spoken before the moment passed. Her voice trembled. "I didn't want to be alone tonight." The words left her lips softly, but they carried everything she'd been holding back. Every quiet holiday. Every birthday spent pretending it didn't matter. Every night she'd told herself she was fine when she wasn't. Luca looked at her like he'd been waiting years to hear that. The intensity of his gaze made her breath hitch. Not surprise, not confusion. Recognition, as if she had finally said something he'd always known but never had permission to. "Acknowledge. You're not meant to be," he said quietly. The certainty in his voice sent a shiver through her. "That's easy for you to say," she replied, forcing a small smile. "You're never alone." His expression darkened. "That's where you're wrong." He stepped closer, stopping just short of touching her. Close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, the steadiness. Close enough that the noise outside faded into nothing. "I'm surrounded by people," he continued. "That's not the same thing." Her eyes searched his face, surprised by the honesty there. For the first time, she saw something unguarded beneath the control. "Tonight," he said, "is loud for everyone else." Another firework burst outside, shaking the windows. "For people like us," he went on, "it's quiet." Her heart thudded painfully. The clock ticked again. 11:57. "You could still leave," she said suddenly. "You don't have to stay." "I know," he replied. He didn't move. The silence between them stretched, charged and fragile. Mila could feel the weight of the choice pressing down on her. Midnight would either pass like every other year, or mark something irreversible. She inhaled shakily. "I didn't call you because I wanted trouble." His lips curved slightly, not in amusement, but understanding. "You called me because you wanted someone who wouldn't leave." Her throat tightened. She nodded. Luca's gaze softened further, the sharp edges blurring just enough to reveal something dangerous beneath, something that had been waiting. "I don't walk away from things that matter," he said. The words wrapped around her, warm and terrifying all at once. Outside, a countdown began somewhere in the distance, voices shouting numbers growing, louder with each second. 10. Mila's pulse raced. 9. She wondered how many New Year's Eve moments she'd let pass without choosing anything at all. 8. Luca reached out slowly, deliberately, and rested his hand against the back of the couch beside her, not touching her, just there. 7. An unspoken promise. 6. That he would stay if she asked. 5. That he would leave if she didn't. 4. Her breath came shallow. 3. She met his eyes, searching for doubt. There was none. 2. The world seemed to hold its breath. 1. The city erupted in celebration. Fireworks roared. Cheers echoed. A new year arrived in a rush of sound and light. And Mila realized, with absolute clarity, that she wasn't afraid of the year changing. She was afraid of staying the same. Luca leaned in just enough to speak softly, only for her. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said. And for the first time that night, she believed the future might actually begin. "I see you every day," she whispered. The words slipped out before she could stop them, fragile and honest in a way that made her chest ache. Mila hadn't planned to say it. She hadn't even known she'd been holding it inside. "I see you every day," she repeated, softer now. Luca didn't interrupt. He never did when something mattered. "You never look at anyone like they matter," she went on. "Not the executives, not the partners, not the people who try so hard to impress you." Her fingers tightened at her sides. "You look through them, like they're noise." He didn't deny it. He answered quietly. "Because most people don't." The words were blunt, not cruel, just true. Mila swallowed. "That's what scares people." "I didn't mean to matter to you," she said quietly. "You didn't try," he replied. "That's the difference." Her breath shook. "People like you don't notice people like me." He stepped closer. This time, there was no space left between them. People like me notice exactly who they choose to, he said. And once we do, it doesn't go away. Her pulse raced. That sounds dangerous, she whispered. It is, he agreed, for both of us. She searched his face for regret. She found none. Instead, there was restraint. Tight, deliberate, barely holding back something intense and deeply personal. The kind of feeling that didn't flare quickly, but burned slow and steady once lit. I've watched you, he continued, longer than I should have. Her breath caught. Why didn't you say anything? Because I knew where it would lead. And now? Now, he said softly, you called me. The truth of it settled between them, undeniable. Mila's chest rose and fell rapidly. She felt like the ground beneath her had shifted, like she was standing on the edge of something vast and irreversible. I don't want to be invisible anymore, she confessed. Luca lifted his hand, stopping just short of touching her face. His fingers hovered there, trembling slightly with restraint. You never were, he said. You were just unseen. Her eyes burned. And now? She asked. His voice dropped, intimate and certain. Now, he said, you matter to the wrong man. Her heart slammed again, harder this time. Not with fear, with the terrifying realization that once Luca Romano decided someone mattered, there was no turning back. Luca Romano moved like he had rehearsed this 1,000 times before, though Mila knew he never would have needed to. His presence was calm, deliberate, every movement measured, every sense alert. He checked the windows first, scanning each pane and frame with precision. The faint click of locks as he secured them sounded louder than it should have. Then the door, every bolt and latch, double-checked, triple-checked. She watched him, frozen, realizing the world she had stepped into was far different from her quiet, orderly life. Someone followed me, he said calmly. The words were quiet, almost casual. But to Mila, they carried the weight of a storm. Fear hit her, instantly cold and sharp, twisting her stomach into knots. She opened her mouth to speak, to ask who, to protest, but he stopped her without touching a finger to her lips. Instead, he cupped her face with a hand so steady it felt like iron wrapped in warmth. His thumb brushed lightly against her cheek. Stay behind me, he said. No hesitation, no doubt. The simplicity of the command left her breathless. It wasn't a request. It wasn't a warning. It was an order, one that demanded compliance, and she obeyed instantly. She stepped back, letting him position himself between her and the door. Every instinct in her screamed that she was safe, yet aware that danger might still be outside. Her chest heaved, quietly, heart pounding as if trying to escape the cage of her ribs. He turned, sweeping the room with a gaze that missed nothing. Windows, shadows, corners. Every sound outside the apartment had his attention, yet his focus remained anchored to her. The tension in his body was controlled, not frantic, and somehow that steadiness eased her. Terror, even as it reminded her of the unseen danger. Who? She started, but he cut her off gently. Don't move, don't speak unless I tell you. Her lips pressed together, trembling. The sound of his voice, low, commanding, confident, made the room shrink to just the two of them. Outside, the city roared with fireworks. And yet here, inside, the world was reduced to a silent, tense bubble of proximity and protection. Luca's hand stayed at her cheek, grounding her. His other hand hovered near the door, ready, alert. She realized then that he was capable of violence, swift and precise, and that nothing, no outsider, no rival, would threaten her without facing him first. A shadow shifted outside the window. His head snapped toward it, sharp and instant, muscles coiling as if spring-loaded. Her stomach dropped. The world felt suddenly very small, very fragile. It's clear, he said after a moment, almost too calmly. His gaze returned to her. You're safe, for now. The certainty in his voice was terrifying and comforting all at once. She wanted to reach for him, to cling to the safety he offered, but fear and awe kept her frozen. Her instincts screamed at her that this man, this dangerous, powerful man, had just claimed her, protection, and that she would never forget it. "Stay close," he said again, softer this time, though his authority was unchanged. "No matter what you think, no matter what happens, stay behind me." She nodded, unable to speak. Words felt pointless. She understood perfectly. His eyes, dark and sharp, lingered on her for a heartbeat longer than necessary. Not with desire, not yet, but with something equally potent, a recognition that she was now under his protection. And for Mila, that recognition was both terrifying and intoxicating. For the first time that night, she felt completely exposed, yet inexplicably safe. No hesitation, no doubt. That was Luca Romano, and she had just realized how much she needed him. A sound outside, soft, deliberate, yet enough to snap every nerve in Mila's body awake. Footsteps, not random, not careless, calculated, approaching the building with intent. She froze, her heart hammering against her chest as if it wanted to escape entirely. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but Luca Romano's presence behind her anchored her in place. He moved fast. Too fast for her eyes to follow. His black coat blurred as he crossed the room, hand already near the door, eyes sharp and scanning. Every movement was precise, every breath controlled. The footsteps grew closer, then a pause, then nothing. Luca's body tensed, ready. She could feel the air shift around him, like it was charged with a current she couldn't name. The quiet click of something in his hand. A lock? A weapon? No, didn't dare look. Then the danger passed just as quickly as it had arrived. Silence reclaimed the apartment, but it felt heavier now, lingering in corners and shadows. Mila's chest heaved, shallow breaths betraying the storm inside her. Luca returned to her side, eyes scanning her face. He didn't need to speak. She knew he had, neutralized the threat. She knew he had protected her. And she also knew, deep down, that if he hadn't been here, she wouldn't be breathing so easily. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm, controlled, but softer than before. Mila's knees weakened and she hugged herself tightly. I'm fine." But she wasn't. Her hands shook, lips quivering slightly, and her mind replayed the sound of those footsteps over and over, fear wrapped around her chest like ice. Luca noticed immediately. His hand found hers, strong and certain, gripping it briefly to steady her. "Shh," he murmured. "It's gone. Nothing got in." Her gaze lifted to him, wide and filled with a mixture of awe and panic. The man they whispered about in fearful tones, the Mafia boss, the man everyone feared, stood there, guarding her as if she were the only thing that mattered. She wanted to speak, to thank him, to say something that could put words to the tornado of emotion inside her, but she couldn't. Her voice had deserted her, leaving only trembling. He guided her to the couch, making her sit without letting go of her hand. "You need to breathe," he said gently. Slowly. In. Out. In. She obeyed, though each exhale still carried adrenaline and terror. The room seemed quiet now, but every shadow felt sharper, every corner darker, and yet with him there she felt a fragile thread of safety. Why would someone follow you?" she whispered finally, voice barely audible. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned the apartment again, then softened slightly when he returned his gaze to her. "Because I'm dangerous," he said finally. "Being near me attracts things. People who think they can challenge me, who underestimate the cost." Mila's stomach twisted. She had always imagined danger as distant, abstract, something she read about or saw in movies. Not real. Not knocking at her door on New Year's Eve. Not controlled by the same hands that now rested over hers. "And you," she began, voice trembling. "You deal with it all." He nodded. "Always. And tonight, you're under my protection. That's all you need to know." Her shoulders sagged and tears threatened her eyes. Relief, fear, and something else, something unnameable, intertwined. She was shaking, her body unable to release all the tension at once. Luca's hand moved to cup her face, thumb brushing lightly over her cheek. "It's over," he said again, firmly this time. "I won't let anything hurt you. Not tonight. Not ever." Mila's breath hitched. She nodded, swallowing hard, trying to believe it. And in that moment, with danger past and his presence surrounding her like a shield, she realized something terrifying. This man, the one everyone feared, was the only reason she felt safe. And somehow, that scared her more than the footsteps outside. The tension in the room began to ebb, leaving only a fragile quiet between them. Luca, Romano's presence filled the space, not threatening now, but solid, grounding, protective. Mila's heart was still racing, but she could feel the shift. Danger had passed, leaving only him. Without a word, he reached for her, his hands strong but gentle. He pulled her into his chest. Not rough, not possessive, protective. Her head rested perfectly against the hollow of his shoulder, the warmth of him radiating through her. She could hear the slow, steady beat of his heart. She could feel the quiet power that always surrounded him, now focused entirely on her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words soft, fragile. "For what?" he asked, his voice low, calm, carrying that same certainty she had come to rely on. "For choosing you," she admitted, almost afraid of the truth behind it. Choosing him had been reckless, dangerous, and entirely unlike her, but it had been instinctive, inevitable. Luca didn't react with shock or impatience. He held her closer, as if the act of doing so was the most natural thing in the world. "I've been waiting for you too," he answered, his voice so low it barely rose above a murmur. The words carried a weight that made her chest ache. Her eyes closed, feeling safe in the way she hadn't in years. Not just from danger, but from judgment, from loneliness, from the relentless expectation of being invisible. With him, she felt seen. A warmth spread through her that was entirely new, terrifying and intoxicating all at once. "You make everything complicated," she whispered, tilting her head slightly so she could glance up at him. Her voice was trembling. "And yet, I can't imagine it any other way." Luca's hand moved gently to the back of her head, tucking stray strands of hair behind her ear. His eyes, dark and unreadable moments ago, softened as they met hers. "You don't have to imagine it," he said. "I've already chosen." Her breath hitched. The words weren't a promise. They weren't a warning. They were a fact. She had crossed into his world. He had noticed. He had accepted. For a long moment, they simply stood there, the room heavy with the unspoken. No words could capture the mix of relief, desire, and fear that hung between them. The fireworks outside continued to echo through the city. But inside, all that mattered was the closeness of his body, the warmth of his hands, the certainty that he wouldn't let go. "I never thought anyone would ever care," she admitted softly, her voice almost lost in the quiet. "I care," he said simply, his hand brushing her hair from her face. "And you've been in front of me the whole time. I've been waiting for the moment you realized it too." Her heart pounded faster than ever. It was dangerous, thrilling, and yet comforting beyond words. "I didn't plan this," she whispered. "I didn't either," he admitted. "But some things, some people, you can't plan for. You can only recognize when they're right in front of you." She tilted her face into his chest again, letting herself feel the weight of his presence, the strength in his arms, and the protection he offered. Not just from danger, but from the isolation she'd spent her whole life hiding behind. "Stay," she whispered. He didn't need to think. He simply tightened his hold slightly, confirming the unspoken agreement between them. In that moment, Mila Winters realized something that terrified and exhilarated her at once. She hadn't just chosen him. She had chosen to step fully into a world she couldn't control, into a man who was as dangerous as he was protective. And for the first time in her life, she didn't. Want to turn back. And Luca Romano. He had been waiting all along. The room was quiet now, the echoes of fireworks fading into distant hums of celebration. Mila pressed her forehead against Luca's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that everything that had led her to this moment wasn't random. Some things don't happen by accident, Luca said, his voice low, steady, carrying that undeniable weight she had come to recognize. She lifted her head slightly, tilting it to meet his eyes. The dark, unreadable eyes that now held something different, something softer, yet infinitely intense. You didn't drunk text me, he continued. His lips curved into a faint, humorless smile. You called fate. Her breath caught. The words hit harder than she expected. Fate. Not accident. Not mistake. Not impulse. Fate. Mila's hands tightened against the fabric of his coat. Fate? She whispered, almost afraid to say it aloud. I was just alone. Scared. And drunk. Exactly, he said softly. Alone. Scared. And human. Those are the moments that matter. The ones that push you to make choices you never would in comfort. That's when destiny calls. She looked down, cheeks burning. It sounded poetic when he said it, but frighteningly real. The idea that something as small as a text, something she had sent almost by accident, was really the pivot of her fate, the thread that had pulled her into his world, made her pulse quicken. You think I wanted this? She asked quietly, her voice trembling. I know you did, he said, almost reverently. His hand brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, thumb lingering. You might not have known it, might not have admitted it, but in the end, you chose me. Mila's stomach fluttered. The idea of choice, real choice, felt like a weight lifting. She had acted impulsively, yes, but Luca's words made it sound intentional, as if her heart had known. The path long before her mind had caught up. So, she began, voice barely audible. It's destiny? His gaze locked on hers. It is, he said quietly. And destiny doesn't wait for certainty. It moves the pieces. It forces moments. It puts people in each other's paths when they are supposed to. Be there. Her eyes widened. So, me texting you, it wasn't a mistake? He shook his head slowly. Not a mistake, a choice. And choices lead to consequences. The kind worth taking. The words settled over her like firelight. Warm, dangerous, necessary. You're serious, she murmured, voice barely above a whisper. I've never been more serious in my life, he replied, his voice dropping, intimate, almost like a confession. And neither should you be. She pressed her forehead against his chest again, letting herself feel the enormity of it. Every heartbeat, every breath, every unspoken promise. Fate had brought her here, to him. And suddenly the terrifying thrill of it didn't feel overwhelming. It felt inevitable. So, she whispered, her voice shaky. All of this, me, it was meant to happen? Yes, he said. His hand cupped the back of her head, thumb stroking gently. Every step, every choice, every text, every moment. Her breath hitched again, this time from awe rather than fear. The world outside, the noise, the chaos, the danger, all of it had led her here. Into his arms, into his protection, into his world. And for the first time, Mila Winters didn't resist. She didn't question. She allowed herself to trust, to believe, to fall, in a way that wasn't reckless, but destined. Because some things, Luca Romano said with certainty, are never accidents. They are fate. And tonight fate had chosen her. If you stay near me, he warned, your life will change. The words were calm, controlled, and heavier than any threat. Luca Romano didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize the truth. He simply stated it, like a man who had seen what change really cost. Mila felt his hand still at the back of her head, steady and warm. She pulled back just enough to look up at him. His eyes were dark, serious. This wasn't a test. This was a line being drawn with brutal honesty. "You won't be invisible anymore," he continued. "People will notice you. Some will watch. Some will envy. Some will try to use you to get to me." Fear stirred in her chest, but it didn't grow. It settled. "You'll lose the safety of anonymity," he said. "Your routines, your quiet, your ability to disappear when things get hard." She listened, really listened. This wasn't a warning meant to scare her away. It was respect. "And," he added, voice lower now, "once you step fully into my world, there's no pretending you don't know what it is." Silence followed. Mila's heart beat steadily now, not wildly. The panic from earlier had burned off, leaving clarity in its place. She thought of her small apartment, her quiet nights, her careful life built on avoidance and endurance. She thought of all the times she had chosen safe over alive. She looked up. "I don't want my old life." The words surprised even her. Luca's gaze sharpened. "You don't know what you're giving up." She nodded. "I do." She took a breath, steadying herself. "My old life was surviving. It was being unseen. It was convincing myself I didn't need more." She lifted her chin. "I'm tired of that." For the first time since he arrived, Luca looked unsettled. "You think this will be easier?" he asked. "No," she answered honestly. "I think it will be harder." His lips pressed together. "Then why choose it?" "Because it will be real," she said. "Because when you walked in, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt chosen." The word hung between them. Luca inhaled slowly. "You don't choose me lightly," he said. "Once I accept something, I protect it. That kind of protection comes with shadows." She reached up before she could second-guess herself and rested her hand over his chest, right above his heart. "I'm not afraid of shadows," she said softly. "I've lived in quiet darkness my whole life." His breath hitched, just once. "I won't cage you," he said immediately. "I won't control you." "I know," she replied. "That's why I'm choosing you." Another silence fell, but this one felt different, decisive, charged. Outside, the city continued celebrating the new year, unaware that a different kind of beginning was happening in this small apartment. Luca finally spoke again. "If you stay," he said, "you stay because you want to, not because you feel protected, not because you feel owned." She nodded. "I'm staying because I choose to." He studied her face like he was memorizing it, like he was committing this moment to something permanent. "You won't get a soft version of me," he warned quietly. "You'll get the whole truth." She swallowed. "I want the truth." His hand slid to her waist, not claiming, not possessive, grounding. "This is your last chance to step back," he said. She didn't move. She didn't hesitate. She leaned in slightly instead. "I don't want my old life," she repeated. "And I don't want a future where I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't chosen." Luca closed his eyes briefly, like a man accepting something inevitable. When he opened them again, the decision was there. Clear. Final. "Then stay," he said, "and let your life change." Mila felt something inside her settle into place. Not fear, not doubt, choice. And in choosing him, she knew, without question, that nothing would ever be the same again. The room felt suspended in a fragile stillness. Outside, the city roared with fireworks and celebration. But inside, the world had narrowed to two people, two heartbeats, two breaths, and a tension neither could ignore. Luca stood close, impossibly close, yet he didn't move in a way that demanded anything. There was no rush, no possessiveness, just presence. The kind that made the air between them electric, taut, impossible to ignore. He didn't kiss her. Not yet. Instead, He looked into her eyes with a seriousness that made her pulse skip. "May I?" he asked. The question was low, controlled, deliberate. Not casual, not playful. But it wasn't a demand, either. It was consent. It was respect, wrapped in desire. Mila's throat went dry. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. For a moment, words failed her. The tension, the months of hidden attraction, the stolen glances at work, all of it, condensed into a single instant. She nodded. That was all he needed. Slowly, deliberately, Luca leaned in. The first touch of his lips was feather-light, almost testing the waters. Not hunger, not urgency, just presence. Her eyes closed instinctively. Her body leaned into him, the warmth of him grounding her as her pulse thundered through her chest. The kiss deepened, not rushed, not demanding, but intimate in a way that left no space for doubt. Every careful inch of movement spoke volumes. He claimed this moment, her attention, her willingness, and yet waited for her permission every step of the way. Her hands rose to rest against his chest, fingers splayed, feeling the steady strength beneath his coat. She felt safe. She felt wanted. She felt seen. And that was terrifying. Because Luca Romano, Mafia boss, untouchable, feared, was here, with her, vulnerable only in the way that mattered. The kiss lingered. Every second stretched and expanded, filling the small apartment with something intangible. Something that wasn't just attraction, not just desire. Something deeper, quieter, infinitely more dangerous. Acknowledgement. Ownership of choice, of presence, of fate. When they finally pulled back, neither spoke. Breath mingled. Foreheads rested together. Her heartbeat clashed with his, a rhythm entirely new and entirely overwhelming. "You didn't need to say yes," he murmured softly, lips brushing her temple. "But I'm glad you did." Mila swallowed, her hands still on his chest, and whispered, "I'm glad too." His thumb traced the line of her jaw gently, grounding, claiming, not possession, but recognition. "That's all I need," he said. "Your yes. Everything else, I'll earn." Her pulse quickened at the words. Not promises of gifts, not pledges of safety, but the raw, undeniable truth. He didn't take, he asked. He claimed only because she allowed it. And that was Luca Romano in a nutshell. Dangerous, controlled, ruthless to the outside world. Yet here, with her, he was careful, protective, intentional. Mila felt a shiver run through her. Not fear, not regret. Something far stronger. Something thrilling. She realized then that being claimed like this, by him, on her terms, was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Her head rested briefly against his shoulder, breathing slowly as the echo of the moment settled in. "I didn't think," she began softly. "You didn't need to think," he interrupted gently. "Just feel." She nodded, and in that single unspoken agreement she understood. She had crossed a threshold. He had claimed her consent, and she had given it willingly. Nothing else mattered. Not the city outside, not the danger that lurked in shadows, not the chaos that came with being near Luca Romano. Because right now, in this quiet, intimate moment, they both belonged exactly where they were meant to be. All he needed was her yes, and she had given it. The kiss wasn't rushed. It didn't crash into her like a storm. It unfolded. Slow, deep, certain, like a promise being kept, not a mistake being made. Mila felt it in the way Luca held her. One hand firm at her waist, the other resting lightly at the back of her neck, grounding her. There was no desperation in his touch. No hunger that overwhelmed. Just intention. Every second said the same thing. "I am here. I am choosing this." Her body responded before her mind could interfere. She leaned into him, fingers curling into the front of his coat, anchoring herself to the moment. To him. The world outside faded. Completely. She wasn't the shy assistant right now. She wasn't invisible. She was a woman being chosen, and choosing back. The kiss deepened slightly, his lips moving with controlled certainty, like he already knew she wouldn't pull away, like he trusted her decision as much as his own. It sent a quiet thrill through her chest. This wasn't about desire alone. It was about acceptance. Luca accepted her fear, her hesitation, her ordinary life. And she accepted him, the shadows, the danger, the truth of who he was. When he finally pulled back, it was only enough to rest his forehead against hers. His breath was steady, calm, as if this moment had settled something inside him. "You're not trembling anymore," he murmured. Mila blinked, surprised. She hadn't noticed. She took a breath and realized he was right. The shaking that had lived in her bones earlier was gone. In its place was something solid, warm. "Sure. I feel steady," she admitted quietly. A faint smile touched his lips. Not the kind he showed the world. Something private, something earned. "That's acceptance," he said. "Not fear, not excitement. Calm." Her chest tightened at his words. "Is that what this is for you?" she asked. "Calm?" He studied her face carefully before answering. "No," he said honestly, "it's clarity." The way he said it, without hesitation, without doubt, made her heart skip. "I've spent my life making decisions under pressure," he continued. "Most of them brutal, necessary, lonely." He paused. "This isn't pressure." His thumb brushed her jaw softly. "This is choice." Mila swallowed. "So what happens now?" she asked. His gaze didn't waver. "Now," he said, "you stop standing at the edge of my world." Her breath hitched. "And," she whispered, "and I stop pretending I don't see you," he replied. Silence fell again, heavy with meaning. Fireworks boomed in the distance. Midnight had passed. A new year had begun without either of them noticing. Mila smiled faintly. "I guess this is how I start it," she said. "With me," he said simply. She nodded. No dramatic declarations, no rushed promises, just acceptance. He drew her into his chest again, not to hide her, not to shield her from the world, but to let her rest there, to let her choose stillness instead of fear. Mila closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, she wasn't bracing for what might go wrong. She was accepting what felt right. And in Luca Romano's arms, with the city celebrating a future neither of them could predict, Mila understood something with absolute certainty. This kiss wasn't a mistake. It was a beginning, and she accepted it, fully, completely, without regret. Fireworks exploded outside, painting the sky with streaks of red, gold, and white. The city roared in celebration, but inside Mila's apartment, time seemed to slow. The distant sounds of laughter and cheers became a soft background hum to the rhythm of her heartbeat, steady, now calm, unafraid. Midnight hit. The clock chimed, marking not just the start of a new year, but a new beginning. One she hadn't thought possible for herself. Mila's chest rose and fell in measured breaths. She glanced at Luca Romano. Standing so close, she could feel the warmth radiating from him. The man who had been danger, mystery, and power in one frame was now her anchor. The only certainty she needed in a world that had always demanded caution. She realized something that startled her. She wasn't scared anymore, not of the city, not of him, not of the chaos that came with being near Luca, not even of the choices she had made tonight. Instead, she felt alive, electric, bold, unshakably aware of every inch of the space between them, every brush of his hand, every deliberate look. He tilted his head toward her, his dark eyes catching the reflection of fireworks in the window. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "You're certain," he murmured. She nodded, letting her gaze linger. "For the first time in a long time, I am." His hand brushed hers gently, thumb stroking the back of her fingers. "Then let me give you something you've never had before." Before she could respond, he leaned closer. The air between them grew charged, warm, tense, intoxicating. His lips hovered just above hers, close enough that she could feel the heat, the intention, the promise. Mila's pulse raced, but the fear was gone. Instead, it was replaced by anticipation, by trust, by desire that had nothing to do with recklessness and everything to do with choice. And then, with a quiet certainty that mirrored the calm in her chest, Luca kissed her. Slow, intentional, certain. The kiss wasn't about possession. It wasn't about power. It was about acknowledgement, about mutual decision, about the two of them choosing to step into something that was terrifyingly real and breathtakingly alive. Her hands rose to his chest instinctively, holding on to him as if to anchor herself in this moment. His hands framed her face, gentle yet unwavering, pulling her closer without forcing her. Every movement was deliberate, a promise without words. The fireworks outside mirrored the rush inside her chest. Red, gold, white, explosions of sound and color. But inside, everything was quiet, except the rhythm of their hearts and the certainty of the moment. When they finally broke apart, just slightly, her forehead rested against his. She could feel his breath steady and warm, matching her own. "You're not afraid," he said softly, voice low. "I'm not," she replied, a small amazed smile tugging at her lips. For the first time in her life, Mila Winters wasn't hiding. She wasn't shrinking. She wasn't pretending the world was safe when it wasn't. She was here, present, chosen. And she had chosen back. The city outside celebrated a new year, but Mila knew that for her, a different kind of celebration had begun. A year of courage. A year of desire. A year of connection she had never dared to dream possible. Luca brushed his lips gently against hers again. A soft, lingering touch that said everything, without words. She rested her hands on his chest and whispered against him, This feels right." He smiled, just a hint, dark and private. "It is right, and it's ours." Mila closed her eyes, letting herself fully surrender to the moment, to the kiss, to the danger, to the certainty that for once fear didn't rule her. And in that explosion of fireworks, sound, and light, she realized something more important than anything else. She wasn't scared anymore. She was alive. And she was with him. The fireworks outside began to fade, leaving behind drifting echoes and glowing smoke in the night sky. The city slowly settled, but inside Mila's apartment, everything felt suspended. Quiet, intimate, final in the best way. Luca rested his forehead against hers. The simple touch grounded her more than anything else had all night. "I don't lose what I choose," he said. His voice wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was absolute. Mila felt the weight of those words settle deep in her chest. Not as fear, not as pressure, but as certainty. The kind that doesn't demand. It stands. "And tonight," he continued, his breath warm against her skin, "I chose you." Her heart skipped, then steadied. She searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, for the cracks she expected in a man. Like him, there were none. "You don't say things you don't mean," she whispered. "No," he replied, "I don't." His hand slid gently to her back, holding her there, not to trap her, but to make sure she felt the truth of his presence, of his decision. "In my world," he went on, "choice is rare, trust is rarer. I don't offer either lightly." She nodded slowly. "I know. And once given," he said, eyes never leaving hers, "they aren't taken back." The air between them felt charged but calm. No rush, no urgency. Just a shared understanding that something permanent had begun. Mila took a quiet breath. "I don't need promises you can't keep." His thumb brushed along her spine, slow and deliberate. "Good," he said, "because I don't make those." She felt a small smile curve her lips. For the first time, his intensity didn't intimidate her. It steadied her. "So what happens now?" she asked softly. Luca considered her for a moment, then answered with honesty. "Now you live your life," he said. "Not smaller, not quieter, not hiding." "And you?" she asked. "I walk beside you," he said. "Not in front, not behind." Her throat tightened. "And if it gets dangerous?" she asked, voicing the last of her fear. His jaw set, not in anger but resolve. "Then I stand between you and anything that tries to touch you." She believed him. Not because he was powerful, not because he was feared, but because he had asked before he claimed, because he had waited for her choice, because he stood here now without armor, without lies. Mila rested her forehead against his again, mirroring the gesture. "I chose you too," she said quietly. Something shifted in his expression, something rare and unguarded. "Then this," he said, "is how it begins." No dramatic kiss followed. No sweeping declaration. Just his arms around her. Just her breath against his chest. Just the quiet certainty of two people who had crossed a line and didn't want to go back. Outside, the new year moved forward. Inside, Mila felt safe in a way she never had before. Not because the world was gentle, but because she wasn't facing it alone anymore. Luca pressed a final, gentle kiss to her forehead. Not ownership, not control, a vow. "I don't lose what I choose," he repeated softly. And Mila knew with a clarity that made her chest ache. Tonight, he had chosen her. And for the first time in her life, she believed that meant forever. As the night settles and the city glows under the promise of a new year, Mila and Luca's story reminds us that fate sometimes finds us when we least expect it. And love can be worth every risk. If you've felt your heart race with every word, if you've been swept into their world of danger, desire, and destiny, make sure you don't miss what comes next. Subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and stay with us for more heart-stopping Mafia romance. Stories that will pull you in, keep you on the edge, and leave you craving every chapter. Because some stories aren't just heard, they're lived. Subscribe, and let the romance continue.